said to Mr. Sanford, here's Doobie on the phone. Mr. Doobie said, keep the foundation. Nothing was said about the wall, about the north wall. Later on, Mr. Doobie indicated that the north wall would have to remain. The problem is that Harry Harvey, in November of 2023, said, in fact, that the wall could not remain because it is unsafe. Okay? So let me back up now. Under the ordinance, when Mr. Doobie contends that the wall is necessary to remain, it's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance refers to the structure. And the structure includes the foundation. And I cited in the application in the appeal those provisions of the zoning ordinance, both the existing zoning ordinance and the new one, that clearly define a structure as not simply a building that is above the ground, but also includes the structure below the ground. And in fact, I've been doing this. I remarked to somebody earlier, how long you've been doing this? I've been doing this for 52 years. I've been before, I can't tell you how many zoning boards of appeal. I can't tell you how many planning commission meetings, how many township meetings, how many municipal meetings I've been before. Most of the stuff you guys hear are variance proceedings. Not too often, I suspect, that you get an appeal of zoning administrator's decision. But my point on this one is, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can't think of a single municipality in which I practice, and I do stuff all over the state. Any municipality that says it is the wall, the above ground portion of the structure, that is required to remain. All you need to do, and admittedly, my experience is, I was trying to think of this, my experience is almost exclusively in the permitting stage. In other words, I'm representing a developer, I'm representing an owner with respect to getting a permit. We've got a violation, a non-conforming setback. And so what we do is we work with a municipality. Every municipality I can think of, and I had this conversation with Mr. Friel as well, it's the foundation. It has nothing to do with the wall. Okay? That's the first order of business. And I cited all the authority in the appeal. Second, and now this is completely independent. That argument alone should be enough to say, Mr. Doobie, you're not correct. You thought the structure had to be above ground. It's not. Structure is the foundation. The wall doesn't have to remain. Next, completely independent of that, assuming for the sake of argument that Mr. Doobie is correct, that the wall is the structure as defined under the ordinance. Nevertheless, you have a provision in your ordinance. It's section 6.1A of the zoning ordinance provides that a non-conforming building or structure, by the way, I referenced in my appeal the fact that often you hear the reference to building and structure, clearly indicating the structure is something other than the above ground building. The non-conforming building or structure does not lose its legal non-conforming status if any part is determined unsafe by the Alcona County Building Department. You have a letter from Harry Harvey saying that he declared the north wall unsafe. Therefore, it had to be replaced, and the ordinance itself says that replacement does not obviate the legal non-conforming continuing structure. I was also trying to get Mike Sanford, Mark Perrier, and Harry Harvey here tonight to be able to answer questions, but you do have the documentation from them. I think I've pretty much set forth what happened, okay, and the facts. I think that pretty much does, but I'm open to any questions the board may have. The Sharpes are here. As I say, do you want me to get an affidavit from Harry Harvey after the fact? Do you want me to get one from Mike Sanford? Everybody seems to be on vacation now. I don't understand. It's middle of August. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. All right. But that pretty much sums up everything that I've got to add, or at least highlight with respect to the.
Thank you. Nick, would you like to speak, or do you want to prefer just that we ask you questions?
I mean, you got a question like me.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I gotta get used to pushing the button there.
No, it's.
Nick just responded, you'll answer the question. Okay, at this time, I'll just go ahead and open it up to our board, if anybody has any questions about the petitioner. Okay, Clarence, you'd like to start?
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. No, I'm fine. I understand what he's talking about. Any question you might.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I don't think I have any questions at this point. Satisfied with what I did.
Ed, do you have any questions?
So on the foundation, was the foundation taken down? Just in that north end?
No,
Was it,
no, it was maintained, it was reinforced, but the original foundation is still there. I think Mr. Cooley can verify that. So I think, well, actually, I think Dan, you went out to the site the other day, were you able to, well, you probably couldn't tell construction, but no, it was verified that the original foundation remains. It wasn't taken down, wasn't replaced, it remains in place. I'm saying it correctly, and Mr. and Mrs. Sharpe are verifying that as well.
Just with a question with respect to that, when you say foundation, are you saying the black wall?
Yeah, yes, that's my understanding, the block foundation, that was the original foundation is still there. As I said, I think Mr. Doobie verified that by going out, and shown to him by Mike Sanford.
No way to verify it.
I'm sorry, did you say that the original, the blocks are still there?
What's still there? Go ahead. Dick, this is Mr. Sharpe.
The original footing is still there, and on top of the footing, they poured about a foot of cement, solid cement. And then when they tore the structure down, the cement wall cracked in 3 places, so they reinforced the whole wall. The whole original foundation still. When Mr. Doobie came out, and Mr. Sanford was there, Mr. Sanford took him over there and dug down to show him the original foundation, so he did see it. That's what Mr. Sanford told me, and I have all the faith in the world. He's not telling me anything that's wrong.
so the block is on the
block,
cement, original cement wall? It was an original poured cement wall, is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
That's on the inside of the block?
Top, no, it's underneath the block. They put block on top of it. They poured cement next to it to reinforce it, put an 8-inch block on it. We wanted more block on it so we would have a better field of drain for the septic system.
So it sits higher now than it was before,
Yes,
but on the same footprint.
yes, same footprint. Same foundation.
I think what I wanted to say is there's nothing that is built outside of the original foundation. Everything lies on the same footprint. In fact, I should have added before, there is nothing on the second story that lies within that 10-foot setback either. It's only the original part of the cottage. Once the variance was denied, it was understood by the Sharpes to stay within the existing foundation for the original structure. Everything else, the addition, is all built at least 10 feet back.
Nick, can you answer a couple questions?
Yeah.
You want to come up here so they can hear you? Outside of the 5-foot setback, is the building as it sits now? I mean, it's not done, right?
Right.
But as it sits now, is it in compliance with every other ordinance
Except for the setback, yes.
except for the setback?
Right. Yes.
So there's no height issues, no nothing. The only thing we're really looking at is this deal, the old cabin is 5-foot setback, whether we're still at that, correct? That's what I have.
Mr. Everett. Since you're up here, I'll ask you a couple of questions today. Thank you for coming tonight. Um, the original application, was that, when the original application was submitted to you, was that for an addition to the house or was that for a new build?
So which one? The very first one that was denied, and then the second, after it, the first one that came in was denied, then the variance was set to you guys. You guys denied the variance, and then the follow-up came to me, and it was for an addition only.
When were you made aware that there was an issue
You're gonna ask
approximately?
a couple months ago, or how long this individual.
Right now, 2024.
Sure. I mean, I could go back to my records to the exact dates.
I'm not paying for exactly. If somebody were to apply for a building permit through the county or a land use permit through you, more specifically a land use permit, and they were increasing the setback or increasing the encroachment into the setback, is that something that you would approve or deny?
I would deny it if they're going into the setbacks, depending on what it is. Because the ordinance does allow for certain things within like waterfront properties, 40-foot setback from the water. Docks or decks can go out that way depending on how high they are, gazebos, et cetera. So there are certain things, but for the majority, if it's a structure, there's pretty hard rules with setbacks.
Under our ordinance for um, 6.1A, which was maintenance of non-conforming buildings and structures. As the attorney had mentioned, it states that nothing in this ordinance shall prevent the strengthening or restoring the safe condition of any part or only their structure declared unsafe by Oakland County Building Department. If a portion of the building is declared unsafe, do they need a land use permit to repair or rebuild?
No, there wouldn't be a permit to shore up a structure, no. But tearing a complete structure down,
I think that's the only question I have for you for now.
Okay, so your red tagging of this is based on the setback,
correct.
setback only.
Correct.
Actually, I do have one more question there. When the applicant submitted for the land use permit, what did they submit as justification for being able to maintain the non-conforming use as far as the structure? Were they going to keep a wall?
As far as the permit goes, there was nothing said about tearing down the complete structure. It was simply an addition to the house that was marked out. It was marked out on the plot plan by dotted lines showing the new project that was going on. So there was nothing in there that said, we're going to tear this whole place down and then rebuild it with the addition.
So the addition was actually, they were keeping the portion of the house that was in the encroachment, and the addition was the rest of the
By
house.
reading the plot plan, they weren't
I'm
tearing
sorry,
it
I
down.
can't hear you.
So
Sorry, so I can't hear you.
which part? Which part did you?
Choose question.
What was the question again?
I can give you a question. So the addition you was actually, they were keeping a portion of the house that was in the encroachment,
Correct.
right?
The permit itself did not request a complete tear down and rebuild of the structure with an addition. It was strictly the addition that was approved.
And if they would have submitted an application to tear the complete house down, including the area that's outside of the non-conforming, that would have required a application for a new build.
Correct. And that
And,
would have brought to light the 5-foot setback requirement.
and would that have been approved?
You know, that would have had to have been a variance against the ZBA.
Um, I think now I've asked all my questions for now, so. You ready to know?
There was something I was thinking, see if I can catch it, come on. If, if it didn't have the non-conforming setback. What, let's say that this happened, this all happened, but it was 10 feet. What would be our action at that point? So let's say that, for example, they were 10 feet off. They went to go put an addition on, found out that, according to Harry, that there's issues, tore everything down, redone.
If they were in violation of setbacks, nothing, we wouldn't have been involved at all. They were pulling on the permit and they would be fine.
But again, if they had pulled a permit for an addition,
Right,
in the process of that addition, they find out that they gotta tear these walls down, reinforce the foundation. Would they have had to come back to us again? Would they have had to come back to you again? Would,
they should have, if they would have done a complete tear down, yes, because it's not just an addition.
I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, I also want to find to
That's fine.
as to why, I understand what Mr. Doobie's saying, but there's a difference between the land use permit and the building permit. Okay, big
We're
difference.
strictly sticking with the land use.
Yeah, and so because the original 5-foot foundation, 5 feet from the lot, is a non-conforming, illegal, non-conforming, continuing setback. It has nothing to do with applying for another land use permit. There's no need to go in for another land use permit. The sole issue is, what is my building permit? Does it permit me to do what I am proposing to do, which is tear down the existing walls? Does it permit me to do anything in addition? And in fact, they have a valid and outstanding building permit to do exactly what they did. And I want to emphasize that in the conversation that Harry Harvey had with Mr. Doobie on the phone in November of 2023, no mention was made by Mr. Doobie that the north wall had to remain. Mr. Doobie also knew that the original structure was being modified to a great extent because he's the one who now later claims that in fact the north wall had to remain. I don't care about the rest of the walls. So I'm here to tell you that the Sharps did everything that they're supposed to do in accordance with your ordinance, with respect to land use permit, with respect to continuing the non-conforming lot line setback, and in terms of applying for and obtaining the appropriate permits. And I will point again to Mr. Harvey's letter, in which he says that the original foundation was there, but also that in order for that north wall to support the roof trusses, and I got a second letter because the issue had been raised by Mr. Friel, that, well, maybe you don't fall within 6.1A because there's an addition that has a second story on it. I went back to Mr. Harvey and I said, can you give me a letter that tells me whether or not the roof trusses were for the first story? Were they unsafe for the first story or any sort of roof being put over the first story? And he came back, that's the second letter from Mr. Harvey that says, in fact, it was unsafe. So even if Mr. Duke could conceivably be correct that the structure does not include the underground portion of the building, which it does. Nevertheless, under 6.1A, there's absolutely no doubt that that wall had to be rebuilt in order to support the roof trusses for the approved construction. Okay, go ahead, questions?
Okay, with respect to, I guess, can you give me a little bit of maybe just answer specifically the timeline? In November of 2023, Nick Doobie had a conversation with Harry Harvey. When did they actually start construction?
It was February 2024. And Mrs. Sharpe says end of February 2024.
What was the purpose for Harry Harvey? In Harry's letter, he said he visited the property and did a structure inspection on October 17th of 2023, 8 months prior to 2023.
I didn't ask Harry that. Maybe the Sharps know the answer as to why Harry was on site. Yeah, that's what Mrs. Sharp is saying, and I'll repeat this for the court reporter, is that she thought Mike Sanford, the builder, just wanted Harry to come out and look at the structure, the wall, et cetera, because Harry is the building inspector for Alcoa County. That accurately, that's okay.
And was it at that time that Harry said that the walls were deemed unsafe?
That would be November of 2023.
Correct.
Yeah.
But he
Am I stating that correctly? Yes. Okay. Go ahead. Who came out on October 17th? Okay, Harry Harvey came out on October 17th. Well, it was October. I seem to think it was November. Okay, October 17th.
So it was like a pre-construction meeting.
I'd have to ask Mike Sanford exactly, but I assume that if I'm the builder, I'd like to have a building inspector come out and tell me what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent, and maybe I should be doing something. Oh,
Did he deem the structure unsafe at the time?
yes, I think that's what his letter says, doesn't it?
Were you still saying that?
They weren't at the meeting, and they weren't staying.
Yeah, saying that it's like everyone sleeping in the structure since then, sometime over 23.
No. Yeah, Mrs. Sharp is saying it's because of the age of the cabin. It was Mike Sanford's, I guess, concern. They make sure with Harry Harvey, the building inspector, that things were kosher.
So, and you said that, the walls would not support the roof trusses. But in Harry's letter, Harry says that the walls would not support the first floor truss.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. The trusses for the roof over the first story. In other
Well,
words,
he's not saying roof, he's saying first floor. So is he talking about the actual floor itself, or is he talking about it wouldn't hold the roof?
it's got to be the roof, because my roof trusses are for the roof, not for the.
But he didn't say roof trusses, he said floor truss.
Oh. You have to ask Gary them directly, my assumption, because Tim Friel had raised the issue, well, you put the second story over this. So my assumption was it was for the first story, for the trusses for the roof, that would not support even a roof for the first story. In other words, you would have to replace that roof in order to put roof trusses on it to support a roof for one story. Mr. Friel's, at least in the discussion with him, was, well, maybe it was to support the second story, therefore it's not a restoration or a replacement, but it's a quote addition. I'm here simply to disabuse the CBA of that particular convention.
Quick question, and I don't want to get into the mud too much on construction. But when it comes to, when you reference shoring up the foundation, can you explain to us exactly what that meant, what they did?
Do you have any sort of clarification on that? I think he said before that they poured something on the inside. Yeah, go ahead. Come on up to the mic.
When they did demolition, it cracked the original foundation in 3 places. Masonry man said they weren't severe. He said, I can drill into the cement wall that's there, the original foundation, put rebar in, and then pour cement next to it and beef it up so that it's going to be safe, which he did. And he poured a considerable amount of cement next to it to beef it up.
Did you do that on both the inside and the outside in order to?
Just on the inside.
Do you have any pictures of when they were doing the construction?
I thought pictures were given to you. Yeah. This one here, you know.
Yeah, just so the court reporter gets it, Mr. Sharp just handed there are two photos there. Dick, were there 2 photos on there? Okay, let me have this one. All right, here's another, two more photos of showing the foundation. And Sharps will verify that, in fact, everything was done on the inside of the existing foundation in order to shore it up. Nothing was done outside. Okay, and here's another photo. This shows the trusses over. It shows a roof over the first story. This is over the north wall. And with the court order, I'm handing this to the ZBA as well. Jerry, do you have duplicates of those so that we can put those, enter those into the record here for the ZBA? Can they keep those photos? All right, if you guys get to keep those photos.
So are you 2 blocks higher than the old foundation? Is that what it looks like? On those pictures? Do you know how much higher you are compared to where that foundation was before?
I think Mark's.
It kind of looks like it's 2 blocks,
I
maybe.
think Mark's, no, tells how much he got it to.
All right, Mrs. Sharp just said that Mark Sanford's note. What,
Mark-
Mark Predator, I'm sorry, Mason. There's a note in it that I forwarded to chairperson the other day that indicates the specifics. I've got it.
Okay.
And if there's any issue whether or not there's a violation of the height limit at that particular place, there's none.
Just looking at the pictures, it didn't look like it went up that high.
Yeah,
I mean, compared to the old foundation.
I don't think it does it?
No. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
In your, written testimony on page 2
This is 2 of the attachment.
of your, attachment,
Yeah, go ahead.
spot in here. Second paragraph, the last sentence, Mike Sanford wanted to know if they needed to save the north wall or just the foundation.
I'm looking, I'm on page 2 here. You on the,
Page 2 of 10,
yeah,
the second paragraph.
second paragraph, okay.
Last sentence.
Yeah, the same day, even though it's clear from the zoning ordinance that only the foundation need to be retained to continue the legal nonconformity, Sharpe sent an email to Mr. Doobie saying their builder, Mike Sanford, wanted to know if they needed to save the north wall or just the foundation. There was no answer from Mr. Doobie.
And that was prior to the start of construction.
Yeah, this is if you look at the beginning of the paragraph, that was all the way back in June of 2023, long before the October 17 visit by Harry Garland.
And did you be able to respond back? One way or another?
Yeah, the response was in March of 2024. When did you finally hear from Mr. Doobie that now the wall needed to be retained?
I emailed him again on July 30th, 2023.
July 30, 2023, Mrs. Sharpe emailed Mr. Doobie.
It's fine.
He responded to that.
It's in the next.
Yeah, okay.
July 2023.
Yeah, so the next to last paragraph, not having gotten a reply to their June 23 email to July 30, 2023, Sharpe's again emailed Mr. Doobie that they intended on keeping the existing north wall and reiterate to Mr. Sanford's inquiry on whether continuing the legal nonconformity required keeping the wall or just the foundation. And I will say, at that point, they were gonna try and keep the north wall, but that's when Harry Harvey came through in October 17 and said, you can't keep the north wall. And I'm just here to tell you, Mr. Doobie was incorrect from the outset, so I shouldn't even have to be addressing what went on with respect to the wall. But just in case this board says, yeah, ordinance, even though, I don't think it's an ambiguity. The structure includes the underground portion, but please remember, and I cited this in the appeal as well, that if there is any issue as to interpretation, if there's an ambiguity in the ordinance, it must be construed in favor of the owner and against the municipality. And I cited the case law.
Questions? Break it down.
Well, wait a second. Okay.
Mr. Attorney, do we need to close the hearing to have discussions?
If you'd like. Yes, and go out of public hearing, activate it.
Okay, any questions?
I think I've got the questions that I had in my head that can answer. Make a motion that we close the hearing part of this.
Okay, we have a motion to close the hearing, public hearing part of this at 7:36. It's support. The motion was by Ed, support by Tom. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay. Public hearing portion of this is closed. Okay, we'll leave it for discussion. No?
I guess, for me, and partly for the benefit of gaggle of people who happen to be here, that I haven't seen in my 18 and 16 years of being on this board. And our charge is to follow the ordinances that are written. Not to necessarily interpret them, but to say, all right, these are our ordinances, this is what it says, and this is what we have to do. And since there was only 5 of us here when you originally came to us last year, one of the things that we talked about in that meeting was that you couldn't encroach beyond what you were. And that's kind of what you set out to do, is to do what we talked about that night, is to add on to that without encroaching beyond that 10-foot setback. So I guess as I look at this, I feel like their intent was to follow what we talked about that day. It wasn't like they said, well, we're going to tear it all down and it's all going to be 5 feet. They did exactly what we kind of discussed that night of, you can't do this, but you can do that. And we talked about it, and that's kind of what their intent was when they set out. I don't know, I'm leaning more towards 61D than 61A. They're not any more non-conforming, and that's part of why I asked Nick is, are they conforming to all of our ordinances beyond this? And they are. They're not making the part that's non-conforming any bigger per se. It's the same footprint. It's, again, I feel like our charge is to protect these ordinances, whether they're good or bad. But I also, as I look at that, that's kind of what they did. It's not any more than non-conforming than it was when we sat here last May, I think it was, and we talked to them about, what they could do and what they couldn't do. I'd love for Harry to be here to see what he actually was talking about, but he's not. So we have to take his letter as his word. If those walls are decaying, which obviously, we live around the lake, we We've seen how that happens. I mean, I can believe that that's the case, that the house was starting to get old. And so it kind of puts them in a spot where it is unique. One of the things that I always look at, and we've had this conversation before, is, it's a Pandora's box. It really, I mean, I get your point, but, anytime we deviate. I don't know that this is a deviation. I think this is just a clarification of what's there. I mean, I commend Nick to fighting for our ordinances, just like we do. But I don't know that 6.1D doesn't cover this particular situation. It's not that we're varying from our ordinances. I just think that 6.1D, when you kind of dig into it, that's what that's here for. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
Now, I'm new to this job. I am a licensed builder. I've never been on this side of the fence previously. I'm giving real education today, when you were not, but I agree with my fellow members here that on our track. We covered it very well.
I will proudly also say that I'm a licensed builder in addition to a licensed engineer. Not that that gives me any credit. That's $5 will still buy me a cup of coffee. Can I still ask one more question to the applicant?
Sure.
As far as the building itself, before you started, or before October of 2023, at what point did you quit staying in it, or did you ever stay in it?
They're trying to figure the wheels are churning to figure out what this was.
Was it a year before?
Earlier that summer, we had completely cleaned it out.
Gas turned off.
And gas shut off, everything was disconnected.
Was that early summer or?
No, it's probably end of July, beginning of August.
And we weren't living in it at all, everything was moved out.
Okay, but you were staying in it prior to July, August.
Yeah. Didn't realize.
You didn't realize how bad the north wall was?
I guess.
All right, and court report, you're able to get that, or sitting right behind you, okay. I'm not sure everybody else could hear what you were saying, but essentially that they were there, they were cleaning everything out, getting ready for the construction, and that would have been the summer of 2023, up until midsummer. Does that sound about right?
I just want to add too that when we originally bought that cabin, we wanted to check back to see how far back it had been built, and the day we were there, we only got there about 4 o'clock. By the time we'd gone through as many records as we could, we were back to 1942.
There's still more.
And there was still more before that. So I'm figuring late 30s that cabin was built. I mean, there's quite a few around the lake that are just like it too.
Just kind of a clarification of what Dan said. So you didn't stay in there after Harry Harvey was there and said that it's unfit.
No, it was empty.
And even if it was the day before, once he said that.
Yeah, thank you. Being an engineer, I always like to cover my bases. I do look up when I talk to them. I've been losing a lot of sleep over this darn application. And so I did do a lot of looking into this ordinance. And one of the things that I did notice is in section 6.2A, abandonment of non-conforming use. If a property owner has the intent to abandon a non-conforming use of land, and in fact abandons a non-conforming use of land for a period of 1 year or more, then any subsequent use of the property or structure shall conform to the requirements of this ordinance. When determined the intent of the property owner to abandon a non-conforming use or structure, the zoning administrator shall consider the following factors. And it goes on, whether the gas or the electricity have been disconnected, property or buildings or grounds have fallen into disrepair, and 3 other items that I don't think they may or may not be applicable to this. The challenge that I have with this case, and I'm trying to understand it, is as a builder and growing up in a family of builders, whenever we've worked on existing structures and calling them additions, and we all know why we do additions rather than tear down and do builds. We always have to leave a wall. And in my professional world now, I still see that, especially downstate when property values are way higher than they are here, the size they are here. We see foundations go up and basements go up right around one existing wall. And I struggle with this because we have, in one sense, a wall, which is a physical wood structure versus a foundation. And I hear the applicant discussing the foundation itself, and I'm glad to hear that the foundation wasn't extended out beyond on the outside of the wall in order to support that existing. Being an engineer, I question how that could possibly happen, but that's not my position here. The other thing that I look at is in November of 2023, Harry Harvey was out on the property, and that was 8 months before he wrote this letter. And if indeed then he determined that the structure was in his terms, basically unsafe and not suitable to build on, our ordinance does provide a provision to repair structures. And when we talk about intent, I question whether there was ever any intent to repair that structure, as goofy as it may sound, but when we follow strictly the ordinance, under section 6.1a, the ordinance does allow for the repair of a structure. So from a practical standpoint, we repair the structure and then do an addition. And at the end of the day, where I struggle with this is there's a point, and it may be a minute and it may be important or not, but there was a point when this property, this building was completely demolished down to a portion of the footing and not left demolished down to a wall. And at that instant, whether it was a day or a week or a month, I go back to my history, and I'm talking, actually in the last week, I talked to Livingston County building official, I talked to 3 building officials in different townships and cities. Every one of them said a wall structure. So I struggle with that. And the reason I give this background is because I concern myself with the next neighbor coming in with an encroachment, and all they've got to do is figure out how to deem a part of a structure rotten or unbuildable or unsafe, and then they can tear down the wall and do whatever they want with it, rather than maintaining the nonconformance, knowing that the nonconformance is still in the same position. This is where I struggle. There's a fine line right there.
Well, I think I get your point to that, but at some point in time, unless we're gonna go out and start digging around them, we have to trust the officials who are charged with that. You know what I mean? It'd be different if they said, well, our builder said that it wasn't good enough, and so we tore it down. It's a little harder when the building inspector is the one who's made that decision, you know what I mean? If it was just that the builder said, you know what, built a lot of these, and this is not gonna do it. That's one thing. For Harry to be the one that said, hey, this has gotta come down. I mean, at some point in time, we can't. I'm not crawling under a building to determine, nobody wants me to determine.
Nobody's gonna do that.
You know what I mean? So we have to, to some extent, we have to trust his position as the county building inspector. And that his decision to say that was based on merit and experience. I mean, you know what I mean?
Okay.
If it was a different situation where it wasn't either a county or a township inspector that said it, I'd be a little more, and then I think you're right, that I think we open up the fact that this guy goes, well, I went down there and looked like it was dry rotted, so I tore it all down. If he gets a county official who is the building inspector to inspect it, and he says, hey, you got an issue, I think we have to take that. Again, I wish he was here, but, you know, at this point, we have to take him at his word that it was a situation where, whether it was rotted or what have you.
May I be recognized just to correct one thing in terms of the language of the ordinance, because you use the word repair, and I want to refer to the actual language of the ordinance. It says, nothing in this ordinance shall prevent the strengthening or restoring to a safe condition any part of any building or structure. And again, I make the differentiation. It doesn't have to be a building. It can be a structure such as anything declared unsafe by the Alconi County Building Department. In other words, it's not just repair of an existing wall that's not torn down or is torn down. It's the strengthening or restoring. To restoring the wall would indicate in essence, replacing the wall. So I think to help this board out, you're not going to be doing anything which is contrary to the ordinance. You're not going to be doing anything which can be used by any other property owner in Caledonia Township to rely upon. As I said, this is very ad hoc. This is a very unusual circumstance, and I appreciate the one board members referencing the variance proceeding and the fact that Sharpe's had no intent to try and violate the ordinance, and in fact, comply as much as possible, relying upon the Alcona County Building Inspector regarding and relying upon their builder. I will also point out, and I did this in the last part of the appeal brief or the attachment, is it's a rather draconian result if in fact this board does not determine that perhaps Mr. Doobie is incorrect, and in fact my clients are not violating the ordinance. It would cost $50,000 to $60,000 in order to tear down everything that's there, because it would include tearing down part of the addition. That's a rather hard result for someone that not only intended to comply with the ordinance, but appears from a legal point of view. And again, I recognize I'm not an engineer, I'm not a builder, I'm a lawyer, but I've been doing this for a long time. And it seems to me that this ordinance clearly allows what the Sharpes and their builder did in terms of keeping the foundation, building on it, and not violating the ordinance by not increasing or expanding the non-conformity. And I thank you for letting me jump in here. And I want to thank the board members. I didn't get the chance earlier for hearing this appeal. I want to thank Mr. Doobie. I repeat, I did not intend to cast aspersions on Mr. Doobie. It's a tough position, nor on Mr. Friel. Even though he's a lawyer and I'd love to cast aspersions in his direction, I refuse to do it.
No aspersions. Having no other questions, comments, discussions.
Make a motion that we bring this to a vote. Sure.
You wanna go ahead and?
Secret ballot.
Top secret ballot.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, Tom Tice.
Before we do that, I think we.
We have to
Make a motion, so.
So the motion would be then, make a motion that we overturn. I guess, what is it?
It'd be overturning the ruling of the zoning administrator in the case, and I would have to say we probably want to go to ZBA 1-2024 with applicants Dick and Sherry Sharpe.
Support. One, 2024?
And ZBA 1-2024.
Okay, so let's redo this. I make a motion that we overturn the ruling of the zoning administrator in reference to ZBA 1-2024. Based on thinking, what are you, I mean, if we overturn this, what's our? Are you thinking 61A? Are you thinking more 61B? I guess to me, I don't know.
Without trying to interject into your motion, I think you're probably referring to 6-1.
We have 61D, structural alterations and extensions which do not increase the non-conformity of the building or structure shall be permitted.
What's your motion?
That's what I'm gonna go with.
If you're good, it's like you know, it's.
Recorded it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion by Ed, second by Tom. Any discussion on the motion? Here, none. Let's do a roll call vote.
Damn.
Vote nay on the fact that I think that this could potentially open us up to more situations where people could come in and apply for a variance. And deem themselves or create a situation where they can do where they can create a non-conforming situation out of a conforming situation, or illegal out of illegal.
Okay.
I'm gonna go on the record as voting yes. The motion has failed. So are we going back to the table? Do we want to discuss it?
Yeah.
So your concern is that we don't want to open this up so that anybody can do this, right?
Correct. I think that we have to stand on our ordinance.
So let me ask you a question. If we pass this under 6(1)(a), where it says that any building or structure declared unsafe by the Alcona Building Department. Is that, in your mind, going to alleviate us opening this up to the next person who is trying to find work on?
I think that the intent of 6(1)(a) is to take a structure that over time nature just age, be able to repair a non-conforming structure to bring it into a safe condition.
So let me ask you a question. If they did work putting according to Harry's letter, he sent us, it would not, it was unsafe. And it would not hold the first floor, right?
Correct.
So if they weren't doing this and Harry Harvey wandered in there one day and said, this is unsafe, would they be in the same boat they're in now? Because the addition is really irrelevant to this. The addition is really irrelevant because it's conforming.
I'm sorry, it is conforming?
The addition is conforming. Is that Nick? Question for you. The addition part is conforming, correct?
Yeah.
So we have to take the addition part out. So remove that whole issue. They own a cabin. It gets deemed by Harry Harvey, the county building inspector, as unsafe. They make corrections to make it safe. Is that where we're at?
Well, I think, in my opinion, here, we're not dealing with the portion of the.
We have to, because the addition is conforming.
The portion of the building that's in the buildable area, there's no issue about that, the building permit. The question is the portion of the building that's encroaching into the setback. I think 6(1)(a) allows for a property owner to be able to go in and maintain an existing non-conforming structure.
Says
Restore, strengthen and restore to a safe condition. So in other words, if there were boards, whether it be in the wall or the floor structure, floor system, or even the trusses, they could restore those and strengthen them to be able to make the building occupiable again. That's after the building official gets occupied. So at that point, once everything is back into shape and they've satisfied the requirements of Harry in this situation to make it a livable structure. Now we're not dealing with we're dealing with a legal non-conforming. The problem is when they tear out the foundation down to the footings. That's where that split instance, I would have to argue that makes it a non-conforming structure.
Well, technically, they didn't take the footings down to the foundation. They didn't take the footings out. They added to those footings. When you look at that, they added to the footings that were there. And to the foundation that was there.
They did, certainly.
So they didn't take the block out, or they didn't tear the cement walls out and put on the block. That foundation is the same as it was. So, Tom, to you as a builder, if my sill is rotted, right down to the sill is rotted, and I go to take that out, right, and rebuild from there up.
Yes,
They
did a real good job of fixing the building in front of it. It's all solid. I think that's the intent, to make this building work. And I think they did a good job.
In place.
Sure.
So are we, okay, so is your feeling that 6(1)(a) would allow this then?
Looks like it to me.
Okay. I mean, I can live with that. I can live with that. I think that, again, because I think once you get to the sill, you know, it's different if I got some rotted boards and I can go in, I can scab those or move them. But if we start to get to where the sill's rotted, at what point am I gotta take that wall out? I mean, there's no workaround to that. Yeah, and maybe I'm reaching a little bit because obviously I wasn't there. I don't know what the extent of the damage was. But, you know, again, I think at some point we have to trust Harry's judgment on this. And I think with you, I don't want to see this now all of a sudden everybody who wants to work around, because I'm not gonna lie, when I originally got the letter and it said that they tore the whole thing down after we had that conversation, I was not a happy camper at all. Until I realized that they did kind of, the merit was that they were doing what we had talked about. So I don't want to see this where, you know, we have 3 meetings a year where people are coming in and going, hey, I'm just going to do what we want. And we'll find a way around it. But I think by the fact that it was deemed unsafe by the county, now it gets pretty specific.
And I have a lot of compassion for the applicants because they've got a lot of money invested. There's a structure that's up. And I received the phone call from the builder, what can you do to help me? And when it was explained to me, I did not know all of the information that I know now. And it's I do have a lot of compassion for the property owners in this situation. And I certainly wish that there would have been probably more communication between the applicant and Harry Harvey and Nick when all of this transpired, because it should never have gotten this far.
Yeah, I agree. If Harry was going to go in there and make this kind of thing, I think on his end he should have got with Nick and said, hey, you know, let's make sure that we're not opening up a can of worms. If I'm going to make this declaration, I need to make sure that everybody's on board and finding an answer for them. I mean, because they're the ones that got hung out on the deal, you know. So I guess, Tom, if you want to make a motion that we pass this, we go back to this. If you want to make a motion that we overturn the ruling of the zoning administrator for ZBA 1/2024 based on,
Yeah, we're gonna send that down.
it's recorded, I recorded it. Based on 6.1A, specifically noting the structure was declared unsafe by the Alcona County Building Department.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we go to 6.1A,
That we overturn the ruling
return the ruling,
of the zoning administrator
zoning administrator,
on case ZBA 1/2024, 1-2024.
okay, 1.24.
I'll just,
Okay, so we have a motion.
I can only reread it in its entirety.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
Tom Tice makes a motion that we overturn the ruling of zoning administrator in case ZBA 1-2024 based on Caledonia Township zoning 6.1A, specifically stating that any or part of the building or the structure was declared unsafe by the Alcona County Building Department.
Correct, yes.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
I will second that.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Okay, I just want to, so I understand this, thinking about the next guy. So if somebody comes to, and here I'm kind of giving our advice to Nick on how to approach future situations. If any or all parts of the foundation, not just a wall, are deemed unsafe by the county building official, then that can be repaired, replaced, strengthened, or restored as part of a building addition, because it no longer becomes a new build. Because there's two different types of building permit applications. One is an addition. Help me out, Tom. Restoration, remodel, new build. So as part of an addition, they can literally take it down to nothing more than a footing, bring it back up.
Foundation. They didn't go down to the footing.
Well, there's the cement block wall that was there, or whatever type
And they
of
still
foundation wall.
they used
and then there's the footing
But
under.
they used that foundation wall. If you look at that, they used that foundation wall.
Okay. So
Built up to that, and then built 2 blocks above that, but still within that same footprint. They didn't tear that wall down, and I get your point on that. Saying, all right, great, I'll take the block all the way down to the footing and build up from there, but according to the pictures, they didn't do that. That, right, it was that.
Yeah.
That initial foundation there, that poured concrete wall.
Yes, yes.
Footing was not disturbed, it was added to the inside.
To strengthen it.
Reinforced, basically.
they basically tore whatever wall it was down, they tore it down to what would be known today as a footing
Right.
and put a cap on the footing and then built 2 blocks up.
Yes. Like it was the right solution.
So we're basically making that interpretation then that it's essentially down to the footing. Okay. That's my discussion. Guess we'll take a roll call vote.
Yes.
Man,
No.
that's certainly. And yes, I just don't see us opening that Pandora's box. So
Well, the motion passes.
the motion passes.
Congratulations.
Thank you all. We appreciate your time tonight. Beautiful evening out. We've got this started.
Okay, let's go back.
Yes, that's right. Going home. Where you go home?
Else, they must have-
I guess. That's the very.
Wait. To finish up your meeting, I need to get on the record and I couldn't hear you.
Okay, there was a motion made by Ed during the meeting. It was supported by Tom. And it was passed unanimously.